Some live fast and die young. Others don't.
My attention span is very short. What's that call that? Whatever.
Whether they've got an insatiable appetite for destruction, a lust for more than just life, or need something artificial to kickstart their hearts, rock stars are known for their love of sex, rock and roll, and, you guessed it, drugs.
Drugs have been used to fuel the creative process really since the beginning of time. I mean, they've influenced writers and they've influenced performers and composers.
Biting the heads off bats, snorting your father's ashes, spending $16,000 a week on heroin.
But I think it's the pressure to keep the hits coming that probably is what lures most people to alcohol and drug abuse.
Celebrities really are just like us.
Today on Topics, we're counting down 10 musicians who we're surprised weren't killed by their drug use during their heydays.
For this list, we've chosen musicians who battled their demons for longer than humanly possible and have made it through to the other side, or at least to older age.
I suppose a lot of people might be frightened to be me, but I'm quite happy to be.
The interesting thing about this list is that the alternate title was the top 10 white guys of all time.
We kick things off with a man who needs no introduction because, let's face it, he's a stooge. At number 10, Iggy Pop.
Today, he's got a lust for life, but through the 70s, he nursed a heroin habit.
So the thing about Iggy Pop is that although he's perceived as a very active and sort of flamboyant performer who's really aggressive and running all over the place, his drug of choice was really heroin, which is famous for mellowing you out and giving you a more euphoric sort of elation, which is kind of laid back and is not exactly what you would think would go with Iggy Pop.
Rumors even surfaced claiming the Stooges sprayed blood from used needles onto their apartment's walls. Pop's inability to stand up on stage finally forced him into a mental institution to get clean, though David Bowie smuggled him drugs. Eventually, Iggy got sober, and now he's as fit and shirtless as ever.
On to number 9 with Eric Clapton.
He sang about cocaine, but that's not the only drug Slowhand fell victim to. His $16,000 a week heroin habit almost drove him to suicide, but he never did it because then he'd have to stop drinking.
Eric would drink all day. He'd be wasted, and by 5 p.m., Patty Boyd, the former Mrs. George Harrison, would then cut him off and replace his booze with tea, hoping that would give Eric just enough time to sober up in time for the show. Now, more often than not, he would sober up, but once in a while, he'd be so trashed that he would just perform on his back.
I had a couple of rock bottoms which just brought me to my knees. Not that they were any worse than anyone else's, it's just that at some point I hit, a wall.
After withdrawing from his career, enduring car crashes, health problems, and being so drunk he'd perform lying down, Clapton finally reached that crossroads, sobered up, and founded a rehab center in Antigua.
Doesn't having a rehab center in a beautiful place like Antigua just encourage relapses? I mean, if I'm going to a rehab clinic, I want it to be in a place that I will never go back to. Put it in an abandoned asbestos factory, or downwind of a pork processing plant, or in Detroit.
Our next entry has claimed to have partied harder than Robbie Williams, Russell Brand, and Charlie Sheen. Now that's saying something. Meet number 8, top-hatted Guns N' Roses Axeman, Slash.
Now he's clean and doesn't even smoke cigarettes. Then he had an appetite for destruction. Slash struggled with a heroin addiction before GNR's debut album, and Axl Rose threatened to quit if he didn't sober up.
So, Axl Rose threatened to quit unless Slash dropped his drug habits? Slash, you should have called his bluff, man.
By 2001, Slash was diagnosed with a heart problem and given only a short time left to live. But therapy and a pacemaker saved his life, and today he has no regrets.
But it catches up with you at some point. You don't see it coming. There's an invisible line that you cross.
The interesting thing about Guns N' Roses is that they abused alcohol, they abused cocaine, but probably their drug of choice was heroin. I mean, this drug was so widely used by the band that it wound up getting some of the members kicked out, like Steven Adler, the drummer. The interesting thing about heroin is that it causes a euphoria and elation, and it really potentiates the songwriting process, which is why it was so valuable for them back in that time. Heroin really did see a resurgence with glam metal in the late 80s. I mean, to the point where every major glam metal band was taking heroin like it was going out of style.
Coming up next on Topics, we meet a man with a unique sense of style, a guy who loves him some good vibrations, a dude who scored dope for a guitar god, and a fella with a stellar smile.